Hi, everybody. This is Zach Howell, and this is episode 2 of the Speed for Your Mind podcast. Here today, I have Jason Zerbach. He is the director of strength and conditioning at Garden City Community College in Garden City, Kansas. All right, and today we're going to talk about how Jason develops and manages his strength and conditioning department right there at Garden City Community College. I think that often, the JUCO coaches they're stuck in an interesting situation as they got a lot of athletes coming and going. They've relatively got 2 years or so to put their best product on the field. So, Jason, it's great to have you on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, not a problem. Appreciate the invite to be on this podcast. A little bit about myself is actually I was kind of a JUCO product myself, and the reason why I say that is I graduated high school with a very low GPA, left myself minimal options, and I actually went military instead of continuing on with any type of sports. Soon after I got done with the military, I worked for a little while, turning wrenches, and then I needed a life change. I actually started going back to school for become a physician's assistant. Started coaching on the side to help out at Waukesha South High School, and just fell in love with coaching, and I just ran with it, and I changed my whole major around, and ever since then I've just been going.
Well, that's awesome. Obviously, I've talked, but Garden City, Kansas is different, right? Can you tell everybody kind of, where you're at and kind of the environment that you're in?
Sure, not a problem. First of all, Garden City, Kansas is about 5 hours, well, I'd say 3 hours away from any decent city like Wichita, 5 hours from Kansas. I mean, we're literally out in the middle of nowhere. Town's about 20,000 people, and it's like living on an island. It really is, because you come out here and there's nothing even close to being around except for farm fields, stockyards, a couple like, what do they call them, butcher plants and stuff like that. Other than that, there's not much around here, so when the kids come out here, it allows them to kind of specialize on their sport and their grades and minimizes distractions.
Absolutely. So when you have those 18, 19, I'm sure you get some 21, 22, right? And it's people that transfer in. When you start, developing the program, whether it be football, volleyball, basketball, whatever you have, what do you think your number one priority is when you start developing those programs?
The number one priority is actually working with the diversity of kids, and then also breaking it down, because I'm constantly working with freshmen. Everybody knows what it's like working with freshmen all the time. You got to sit there and break everything down into progressions and really, really got to learn to taper it up. So instead of having a typical split with, say, with football or with baseball, because of how large the groups are, you got to kind of split it up into multiple groups to where you have guys that are more advanced in the same group as guys that are really, really green that have never actually worked out or don't know what a hip hinge is or don't know how to squat properly. So you kind of have to sit there and have multiple stations going, but utilizing the same form and technique, because what you run into is a lot of these kids also won't do the reps. So you kind of have to run it almost military style on a whistle to make sure they actually are doing the work. So in a way, it's kind of a big circle where you're sitting there just babysitting and trying to get everybody situated at the same time, trying to improve them as an athlete. Because the majority of the kids we come in here have never worked the posterior chain on their body. They have no idea what their hamstrings are, their rhomboids, their lats, anything on the backside. They're all confused.
Yeah, I think you got a tough job, man. They got those kids are in and out of there quick. I mean, how do you develop them with the limited time that you have?
The hard part is some of the sports here actually will have kids take a certain amount of credits, so we can get them in and out in 18 months instead of typical 24. It makes it very, very interesting. So one of the big things I do here is I try to stick to a lot of the major exercises. And like when I say the major, the big three for me would be squat, deadlift, because it builds a posterior chain. And then also, I like doing pull-ups or chin-ups because it also works posterior chain. A lot of kids come in with the anterior rotation to the shoulders because all they did was bench, and they think bench is the big thing for them to get them into a D1 program. So it's really, really revolving around trying to get these kids to understand how to utilize their muscles, get their work ethic situated, because they're a JUCO product for a reason, and it's either because of their grades, it's because they got in trouble, they're transferring, some kind of issue related to their work ethic, and something going on at home where they didn't have a support system. So it's kind of, in a way, some days I feel like a life coach out here.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a big part of. I would say, honestly, I'd say even more at that situation, you're probably doing that a hell of a lot more than the rest of us are. Every single day.
It becomes kind of interesting because here at Garden City, I have 431 athletes, and we just changed the out-of-state rule, which for football, we were restricted to 20 out-of-state kids to make the roster. Well, now we're going just the NJCAA rules. We're allowed to have 85 football players, and they can all be out of state now.
Wow.
So we traveled with 45 last year. This year we're going to be traveling with 62, but we have 85 officially on the roster, and then we have all of our red shirts. So my football team here alone has 149 athletes currently.
Now, what's your staff like? I mean, is it just you, or is there anybody else that you have with you?
Well, until earlier this week, it's been just me. I did get an intern earlier this week. She's going to be stuck more primarily with Olympic sports. The way I run everything here really is anytime I'm working with a team, I have to have an assistant coach with me. Okay. Because a lot of the groups I have to run are sometimes 35 to 40 kids, and it's kind of hard to watch over 35 to 40 kids by myself. So I'll have an assistant coach that's specific to that sport be in there with me, not so much to critique the athletes, but be more of the motivator and be more of the pusher, trying to get the kids to move, trying to get the kids to actually, how should I say it, do what they're supposed to, be accountable for their actions.
Right. Well, how do you? So when you put together your programs and you look at, obviously you have your second year athletes and you got your first year athletes, right, within your program. How are you different in your developmental programs between those two?
That's an interesting part because a lot of times coaches don't give me options. What ends up happening is a lot of times I won't be able to split them up to where I just have the freshmen and then I just have the seniors. What we do for some sports is we'll split them up into groups of, like we'll say for football specifically, is we'll have a gold group, a black group, and a brown group. Okay. And the gold group are guys that are the dogs, the hard workers that coach well and that want to actually make it into another D1 position. So with those guys, we kind of split them up into our work ethics because they're easily coachable and they're easily get stuff adaptable. And then like the brown group is the group where they don't know if they want to be here or, they're really struggling and hard to be coachable. So with those guys, we really, really regress everything, trying to get them through everything and trying to understand the work ethic and trying to understand the movements. The black group is like the in-between group. So a lot of the stuff we do here are the kids that actually want to be coachable to not being coachable. But the big thing is for me, for what I do with the kids is progress them through a warm-up that I put together that helps them understand how to retract their scabs, how to actually activate their glutes during the warm-up. So when we get them in the weight room, a lot of the basic movements are they know how to move their body properly when I put them underneath the squat bar or if I put them underneath the front squat. Now, between the groups, I really don't have different workouts. I change the weights because I try to keep it so basic that the kids understand what it takes to be part of a team. Right. Now, I wish I could run it like a typical program where first year I have this, second year I have this, third year and fourth year, and we'll move on. And right. Unfortunately, with some of the guys that I have here for 18 months, as soon as I get them ready and start looking really good or putting on some good weight and making great jumps and strides, they're out the door. Right. They're out the door. Like Delshon Phillips, our starting linebacker from last year. Great kid. I had him for 18 months. I packed 30 pounds on him, got him all ready. And then next thing you know, he's out the door going to Illinois. So it's just like, holy cow, that was fast.
Right. Yeah, especially when you get a relationship with the kids and it's just like boom, boom, gone.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. Well, what do you what advice do you have, for the coaches that are, trying to develop programs for, where, just very similar situations that you're in, putting together a program for an 18-year-old, for a 19-year-old, for freshmen that are coming in, for a 21, 22-year-old that decides to transfer and spend a year at JUCO. What's some advice you have for them?
Be very, very flexible. And the reason why I say be very, very flexible is I'm always adjusting progressions and adjusting warm-ups and adjusting how I approach all the athletes, because there's such a large spread for me here. So it's very similar to when I was at Gardner-Webb doing an internship. We got a bunch of freshmen in, and then I was working with the seniors all the time, and all of a sudden Ben Souders, he threw me with all the freshmen. With no warning, just said, hey, you're running the freshman group with Coach Smoke. And I'm like, all right. Next thing I'm looking, I'm like, good Lord, I wasn't prepared for it whatsoever. And the thing is you kind of have to hit some stuff on the fly, so you kind of have to understand a lot of the aspects that you're going over. So my big thing to a lot of the coaches are, you got to be flexible in what you're able to coach. You got to understand exactly what it is you want to get these kids to. And you also have to adapt to what the coaches recruit. Because, like last year with football, we had Kansas kids were the majority of the team. And a lot of those kids were hard workers, but they never utilized their bodies as compared to the super athletic freaks that we had coming from other schools or some of the out-of-state recruits. So you kind of have to find a common ground for me here, because they all work together. At the other ones, you got to have multiple programs and multiple facets into your game where you can sit there and rely on all of it. Because also here, working with female athletes, there's a great dividend and great spread, but we don't get a lot of D1 transfers for Olympic sports here. That's primarily football.
Okay. So let's say you're looking at programming for, because I've been in your position before, right? I mean, I've had to take 400 and 500 student athletes and be able to train them all on your own and doing all that kind of stuff. And what are you, when you're training, like let's say a volleyball program, for instance, okay? Mm-hmm. Does your program, for that sport look different for like developmental purposes than let's say your football one? How do you program differently there, and like for developmental wise, or do you keep things relatively the same? Accessory wise, is it the same? Is it different? What is your take on that?
Well, let's do a comparison of like football and volleyball. And like with football, you don't have a lot of landing mechanics that you need to worry about per se, unless I'm working a lot of plyometrics or jump training or something like that. But volleyball, it's a norm.
Right.
They're always jumping and they're always landing. And so when I look at a lot of the athletes, I'll have a warm-up that's very, very similar between all sports. But then when I go with volleyball, we restrict overhead movement because of overuse injuries, obviously. And then I work a lot of jumping mechanics, because one of the dominant issues I see here for women are knee valgus. So any type of movement you're watching, it needs to bend in, which is kind of the norm nowadays. But here, with the kids not being as athletic or not having proper training, it's a little bit more emphasized. So I kind of have to modify it to each sport. When I look at a lot of the individuals in that sport, you start to see trends and issues where, okay, well, we got to change the accessories for this or change the accessories for that. Because like a lot of football players I'm starting to see with their exterior rotation of their feet, where they're, the duck walk, trying to get them to understand, all right, we got to fix that. So we got to get the glute median and glute min to relax and get them to understand actually how to, fire their crotch, their groin muscles, and then also the hips. And then you go to like I said, with female sports, you got the knee valgus. They don't have the duck walk, but then they have the rounded shoulders forward because of poor posture. So it's kind of always adapting and changing. And it all revolves back around who the coaches recruit. Because some of our volleyball girls here are a little bit on the larger side because we need some power hitters. And some of those girls, they don't know exactly how to move their body except for getting the hip power when they're swinging that bat. So trying to make them better athletes, I'm really breaking some stuff down to tumbling. I'm borrowing a cheerleader mat so I can sit there and do some tumbling with the kids so they understand body awareness, just to increase their athletic ability.
Right. No,
Because the end goal here is not so much for them to go someplace and make money, is to get them down to your guys' level, in South Florida, and then some other D1 programs. May not be the best of the best, but at least when they get there, all the strength coaches and the coaches, if they come out of Garden City, will know that these kids know how to work, know how to bend and know how to move.
Yeah, I think I can tell you, from being a head guy, from being an assistant, that there's such it's a pleasant surprise when you get a JUCO kid in that knows what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, I've actually had a couple coaches hit me up and they're like, "Hey, how is it that you got this kid to bend like this? We never had a JUCO kid, and he works." It's like, well, to be honest, I kind of gutted him for a while, made him work. He had no choice. If he couldn't do the reps at a certain weight, I'd kick him out and he'd go run 7 miles. And they're just like, "What?" I'm like, "Gotta make him work."
Yeah, no, I think it's such a blessing when you get those kids, because half the time, you get some JUCO kids in. They number one, they struggle with attitude. Number two, they struggle doing a lot of the stuff you want them to do. And when you do, you kind of ask yourself, well, who in the hell worked with these guys or these girls? So it's definitely a lot to be said for them. So no, but go ahead. Were you about to say something?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a tier system, though, because I got a lot of kids that come in here that tell me they have high school strength coaches, and they're doing quarter squats, and they're telling me that's what their strength coach told them and everything else. And I think that it's kind of, like I said, a tier system. You deal it from my end, coming to you guys, and then I deal it from high schools, but you guys deal it from both. It's just you guys, the D1 athletes tend to be a little bit more coachable and more ready to work as compared to the kids that I tend to get in. And I really think that might be like the only difference. So a lot of times I need a little bit more patience than a lot of my fellow colleagues in this industry. So
right. No, absolutely. You got a tough job, man. Tough job. Well, hey, listen, Jason, I really appreciate you being on the show. If you have not followed Jason on Facebook, make sure you do. Puts out, he's got a lot of good content that he's putting out. So thank you, Jason. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate yours. Thank you.